We often describe the United States as a sprawling democratic republic shaped by millions of voters. The reality of the country's power structure is vastly more concentrated. It operates as a dual oligopoly, governed by two autocratic figures, the Eastern land speculator and the Western land speculator. This map illustrates how that authority is managed. To maintain a balance of power, the speculators divide their influence geographically. The territory is split directly down the middle, giving each autocrat distinct, parallel control over their half of the nation. The progenitor of this system, the older father in the dynamic, is the Eastern land speculator. Ethnically British and tracing his lineage back to the colonial era, he presents as a middle-aged monopoly man, notably lacking gray hair. His economic strategy is highly restrained. He focuses strictly on extracting localized wealth and acquiring specific, targeted portions of Eastern real estate. His offspring, the Western land speculator, emerged later during the era of U.S. westward expansion. Driven by a gluttonous, goblin-like appetite for capital, his goal is entirely monopolistic. He operates with extreme, genocidal ruthlessness, willingly displacing and killing entire populations to claim ownership of all available land in the West. While the Eastern speculator is less overtly cruel, both men share the same predatory malice. They actively compete with one another, yet they cooperate within a shared capitalist framework that keeps the power concentrated at the top, regardless of their personal rivalries. The Eastern speculator maintains standard personal hygiene, including regular bathing. The Western speculator lives in a state of deep, perpetual vulgarity. He never bathes. His poorly trimmed beard is chronically contaminated with mold and fecal matter, and he survives entirely on a diet of raw, dead fish. Because he chronically soils his own trousers, he is constantly surrounded by a visible swarm of flies. He pairs this lack of sanitation with extreme exhibitionism. Wearing a large cowboy hat, he uses scissors to deliberately cut a hole into the front of his trousers. He then proudly displays his unkempt, greasy genitalia to the public as a grotesque performance of hyper-masculinity. Logically, a populace would recoil from this physical reality. Instead, the Western speculator isolates the working class of the Western United States through a hyper-individualistic philosophy. He aggressively promotes a culture of mine and yours, atomizing the workers and dissolving their communal bonds. He pairs this isolation with a branding trick. He surrounds himself with gold and money, manipulating the public into viewing him as a cool, aspirational figure. By associating his person with wealth, he encourages the populace to overlook his filth. This creates a powerful psychological feedback loop. When a worker views the speculator's wealth as a goal they can eventually replicate, they stop seeing his vulgarity as a reason to rebel and start seeing it as a sign of success. They spend their energy trying to reach his status rather than challenging the system that created him. This organizational chart shows how the oligarchy manages operations on the ground. During the Civil War era, regional dominance was delegated downward from the speculators to subordinate figures, whose authority is strictly bound by their superiors. The first of these subdivisions is the Southern plantation owner. His physical profile is marked by severe biological anomalies. He strictly wears green-tinted spectacles over geometric facial wrinkles, grows phallic-shaped hair follicles, and exhibits horn-like fecal protrusions extending outward from his buttocks. Under his toenails, mold and fungus grow constantly. His daily routines are equally bizarre. He insists on consuming a diet consisting exclusively of bacon, which he inexplicably attempts to eat by forcing it into his belly button. This results in catastrophic gastrointestinal failure. He suffers from spontaneous rectal expulsion of hard egg-like objects, experiences severe fecal incontinence whenever passing gas, and endures chronic debilitating bowel impactions. This localized bodily dysfunction translates directly into his labor practices. The plantation owner is profoundly lethargic. To survive his own biology, he relies on the forced labor of enslaved individuals to manually clear his chronic bowel impactions by hand. The Northern industrialist emerged directly from the Industrial Revolution to manage the opposing regional subdivision. He typically wears an abnormally oversized necktie, or sometimes a voluminous scarf, paired with a white shirt that is heavily soiled by industrial grease and oil. Unlike his Western superior, he engages in basic bathing. However, he refuses to launder his clothing. He simply wipes visible dirt away from his outerwear, leaving his face chronically oily and his undergarments severely compromised by fecal staining and intense odors. To project toughness, he relies on public erraticism. He routinely steps into the street to engage in spontaneous, vocal, physical altercations with feral street dogs. Inside the factory, he manages his workforce through hyper-violent harassment. He asserts dominance by arbitrarily striking employees in the anal region. If a subordinate verbally angers him, his primary method of reprimand is to physically leap into the air and defecate directly onto their face. In instances of severe insubordination, his capital punishment protocol is absolute. The industrialist uses heavy industrial chains to physically grind the offending factory worker into raw biological matter. He then takes this raw flesh and serves it to the remaining workforce in place of their standard meal rations. When we look at the physical realities of the regional managers, the overarching authority of the two speculators becomes clear. The manual clearing of bowels in the south and the literal cannibalization of factory workers in the north are not rogue events. They are the permitted, highly localized operations of a unified design. There is a massive disconnect between the visceral, horrifying reality executed on the ground and the aspirational, hyper-individualistic propaganda sold at the absolute top of the hierarchy. This structure creates a cycle where the working class is systematically atomized. They are separated into individual units, unable to organize, and eventually ground down, quite literally, into raw biological material to feed the system. The final result of this oligarchy is that the masses are successfully manipulated into aspiring toward the very figures who exploit them. They are so focused on the gold that they eventually embrace the very filth that devours them.